Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Lawrence A. Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins. Lynn Woolsey has been representing Marin and Sonoma counties in the House of Representatives since 1993. Now in her 10th term, she replaced Barbara Boxer when Boxer was elected to the Senate. An outspoken liberal, Lynn Woolsey has been co-chair of the House Progressive Caucus and was a founder of the Out of Iraq Caucus. There's a lot to talk about, so the Congresswoman is our only guest today on Marin Voices and Views. Lynn Woolsey, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Larry.
Great to have you here. Now, first and foremost, there's a lot of speculation that very soon you might announce your retirement from Congress. Can you tell us if you plan to continue and if the redistricting that is underway right now might have any role in that decision?
Well, actually, at the end of this term, 10 years, 10 terms, I'll have served 20 years, and I will be 75 years old. So wouldn't you think I'd be thinking about whether I go any further? And I'm making that decision, and I will announce it at the end of June.
The end of June, okay.
But does it have anything to do with redistricting? No, absolutely not. But I think Marin County residents should think very seriously about what redistricting would mean to this wonderful 6th Congressional District. So I'm hoping, because it's a district that makes more sense than almost any district in California. It has so many communities of interest with the coast, and with ag, with organic ag, with dairies, with the SMART, with Highway 101, with the water and the Russian River. I mean, there are so many reasons to keep this district together. But one of the main reasons, as far as I'm concerned, is that we do not want Marin to go to San Francisco, because you see, Marin would become the stepchild of San Francisco. And that should be prevented if we can do it.
Now, in any case, there's a scramble already underway for candidates who'd like to succeed you.
Oh, you're
Author
still
and
there.
activist Norman Solomon is interested, Assemblyman Jared Huffman, State Senator Noreen Evans. And so I have to put this still in the prospective, but if you retire, will you endorse a candidate? And what kind of candidate do you want to see take this very progressive seat? You've been reelected 9 times, often with support in excess of 70%. That shows very strong approval of the progressive positions that you've taken.
Well, I would hope we would have a progressive being the member of Congress from this district forevermore, because if there ever was a district that will support a free thinker, a real progressive, it's the 6th Congressional District. Will I endorse if I leave? I doubt it. The people you named, just, those 3 have all supported me. It would be pretty tough for me to say, well, I really like you better than you. But we'll see.
In your tenure in the House, you've been in the majority on 3 occasions, three sessions, and in the minority for the rest of them. Right. You just went from the majority to the minority, and I wanted to get a sense from you, if you could tell the people here in Marin how different that is from a member of Congress to go from a majority party to a minority party and see the new majority party assault on social issues like Planned Parenthood or NPR radio or some of the things that are near and dear to your heart.
Well, in the past, when at the end of this 20 years, I'll have actually served in a majority situation for 6 years. But those other 14 years, it never, ever entered my mind that I couldn't get things done. And we did get things accomplished for our district, for the country, and for our values. It's different now. It is very difficult. It's knee-jerk in Washington. It's much harder to make sense out of what we're doing. And except for the Republicans have finally overstepped, and they did it so quickly with Medicare that I think maybe we can turn the dialogue around and make the White House and the Senate, who are in Democratic control, give them more clout.
So are you feeling an overreaching on the part of the Republicans that you think is going to have an unintended consequence to them as being diminishing of their power?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it happened this week. Ryan, the Ryan budget, at his own town hall got booed because he refuses to acknowledge the fact that the wealthy get wealthier, the top 2%, and then that the only way to help bring revenues into this battle of ours to cut our deficit is to have the wealthy pay their fair share. He wants to cut the taxes on the wealthy. And these are his own people. They booed him not once but twice. So I think it's clear they overstep. Seniors are not going to let them privatize Medicare.
Oh.
They're just not going to let them do it. And they think that that's their way to solving our budget problem.
Well, I think they like to privatize profits and socialize deficits.
Oh, absolutely. You're right on that. But the idea that we would hand seniors in this country to the insurance companies and say, here's one more customer for you. Here's a little voucher, and do what you want with that nice senior person. The seniors get it, that they would not be in good hands if we did that.
Lynn, I really appreciate your strong leadership from the beginning in opposing the war in Iraq and working to bring our troops home. And recently, Defense Secretary Gates relayed to Prime Minister Maliki in Baghdad that we would be willing to keep thousands, well over 10,000 troops in Iraq beyond the end of this calendar year, which is when the Bush-SOFA agreement calls for all American troops to be out. And this allegedly was at the behest of President Obama. And the word was all the Iraqis have to do is ask, and we'll keep more troops there. Do you believe that all troops will be home by the end of this year? And are you surprised or upset by this initiative from the Obama administration to actually keep troops in Iraq?
Well, what I believe and what I want, maybe two different things. The Progressive Caucus had a budget that was voted on the House floor that actually comes to balance and cuts our deficit faster than any of the other budgets because, I'm getting to this, because we actually bring our troops home from Iraq, Afghanistan. We put enough in the budget in 10-year budget for bringing a year in Afghanistan and a year more in Iraq to bring our troops home safely and responsibly. But Afghanistan alone is $9 billion a month.
When you read the papers, you see that more Americans than not believe that are opposed to Afghanistan, our procedures over there. And one of the things that seems to be happening is that the powers that be in the Democratic Party are either muting their criticism of the Obama administration or not saying anything about what's going on to the Obama administration. I couldn't help but notice last month General Petraeus.
That's all right.
Petraeus came and you were questioning him and you told him he was tone deaf. And he was giving you weasel words when you're answering your questions.
Who told you that?
We heard about it.
I did.
More power to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people would like to ask him some questions. But anyway, when you do something like that, do you feel pressure from the administration or the leadership in your caucus to say, hey, Lynn, calm down here? Or what happens?
I've been told off the record that when they in the White House, when they're trying to convince Democrats to come along with their programs, they use me as the litmus test. They say, well, would you try to convince Lynn Woolsey to do this? I mean, I'm proud that they do, because they know that some of us know why we want out of, let's just use Afghanistan for an example, why we want out of Afghanistan, why we don't think that it's the best use of our funding, why we know it's not making us more secure, and we're not going to change on that. And I suppose there's pressure from our own leadership, they'd like everybody to go along with them. But you know what? It isn't going to happen. I didn't go along on Iraq. I was the first person to bring a resolution to the floor to bring our troops home. And from that moment on, members of Congress realized you weren't going to lose your seat if you spoke out, because that's what the public wanted. And the public was so far ahead of us. They're ahead of us on Afghanistan. I mean, why are we so slow?
Well, but why is it that in a democracy we're not seeing the kind of responsiveness we would expect? It's pretty overwhelming. A lot of Republicans are opposed to continuing in Afghanistan, yet the leadership and the White House seem to just flick it away as if we don't know enough, we're not smart enough, and that they know better than we do.
Well, they may think they do, and it's maybe for political reasons, to not be tagged as the weak-kneed, anti-war, democratic leadership, but that is not what the general public is looking for.
Now, in the recent budget deal where there was this threat to shut down the government, and these negotiations went on right until the 11th hour when the government technically was going to shut down, they announced $38 billion in cuts, but that figure also includes more money for the Pentagon. Now, since you went to Washington 18, 19 years ago, the Pentagon budget has continued to increase. It's more than doubled in the last 5 years alone. And it's at the cornerstone of our economic problems. We can't have any reasonable route to reducing the national debt if we don't control or reduce defense spending. Is there a game being played where President Obama has proposed increases and now he's going to propose cuts to those increases so that the net game is that funding is going to stay at over $700 billion a year?
Peter, maybe. I don't know what the game is. All I know is the progressive budget cuts $600 billion out of the budget for the Pentagon, because you know that's what we spend in a 10-year period on Cold War weapons that are being built all over this country to fight the USSR.
It's a little old.
And no, I mean they're in there because they're being built in somebody's district or a group. I mean they're smart, the defense industry. They build pieces of it all over the country so that and then it would be called a job loss if we cut those programs. But we know we have to, and so what we can be glad of, we have 77 members of the Progressive Caucus that will stand up for these values, and we gave members a place to land if they wanted to vote, we think, more sanely, and actually get to balance much sooner.
Right, the Republican budget that was just passed, basically on party line, the Paul Ryan budget, which calls for cuts to Medicare and actually essentially privatizing and then getting rid of Medicare.
Right, that's what they want.
They do. Polls show that there's opposition on all sides to that, despite the fact that every one of the Republicans voted for it. The president was here in California the other day. And
yesterday,
yesterday. He was here at Facebook yesterday. Yeah. We try not to date the show.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I forgot about
Last month, folks.
No, but the president was at Facebook, and he called that Ryan budget radical. Yet it seems, time after time after time, the president wants to act as a mediator between the Republicans and the Democrats, and really is having a harder time staking out his honest goal or his bottom line or where he wants to lead the country to. Do you have, and a lot of people are disappointed, and I think a lot of Democrats are disappointed. As someone who's in the caucus and someone who's in Congress, what are your thoughts about his style regarding these negotiations?
Well, I was a Hillary Clinton supporter. I was not against Barack Obama, but he is who I thought he would be. He's a very moderate to right of moderate leader. That's who he is. That's who the people elected, but they didn't know that. I mean, they thought they were electing this charismatic, which he is, and he's brighter than bright and has great ideals, but his leadership style is much more conservative and much more careful. But now, you brought up the Medicare, and I've been hammering on it. It is very clear that the entire country does not want this to happen. So there is no compromise on that one. And I think he knows that.
And Lynn, there's strong support for taxing the rich, yet the
Yes.
president made the deal and acted like it surprised him in the lame duck session to extend the tax cuts into next year when we have an election cycle that makes it very difficult to pursue that.
Right.
And once again, we have this disconnect that the people are very clear that they want to see the tax cuts for the rich ended
Right.
and have them pay their fair share.
Right.
Yet the president seems to want to try to mediate this, and it frustrates a lot of people, particularly because he seems to be able to absorb these things and not really put straight accounting to them. That the tax cuts that he approved in the deal at the end of last year will cost us nearly $1 trillion.
And you're right, and the general public knows this. They know it's wrong. I mean, they want it changed. But the leadership should have been there in the last 2 years. I mean, when the president got elected as the most popular president in recent history, he was so popular. If we had just had this great, big, huge, wonderful jobs bill that this country needed, first of all, we'd be paying taxes. Everybody working would be paying taxes, and we would not have lost our majority.
I wonder.
We wouldn't have. Then we could have done health care.
I wonder if there's something in Washington generally that prevents that. And one of the things that I'm aware of now, there's H.R. 5 that's going through your session. That's are you aware of that? It's essentially a medical malpractice products liability bill for medical
sure.
products that essentially
yes, that's right.
the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry and the doctors want to limit types of damages, pain and suffering damages specifically, to $250,000. And what that means is if a doctor cuts off the wrong leg somehow,
Which they do occasionally.
hey, no one wants that to happen.
Right.
But what happens then, and it's the law now in California actually, what happens then is you're limited to discomfort, anxiety, pain damages to $250,000. And that it's really saying the government, not a jury, gets to decide a case.
Right. Well,
That's what
wrong.
happens.
Well, that's wrong.
It is wrong. But I also was looking at this, and I was looking at it in terms of this lobbying situation. I noted that the pharmaceutical industry in 2010 spent $240 million. They have 1,585 lobbyists. The doctors and the health professionals spent $85 million, 86, and have 781 lobbyists. And you read about these things, and you read about the Congress people getting lobbied. What do they say to you? What do they do? How do they infiltrate in the Congress like
Well,
that?
first of all, they don't touch me.
Well,
See, I'm lucky, but because I don't raise money from I don't raise any money from any group that I can't support. And I support AMA, but I don't support these special interests groups. They might be considered a special interest group, but I don't support them on these issues that you just
Right.
talked about. Hence, you asked this question, why didn't we have a robust public option as part of our health care reform when it saves $68 billion over the first 7 years and more after that? Because it brings competition to the private insurers for that very reason. Lobbying, money, and making an agreement ahead of time with the insurance industry that we would draw the line at that point.
So,
So I didn't get to go forward.
what are the chances of having of stopping them from getting what they want, or having them roll back what they don't like, which is what they seem to be wanting to do with the health care bill that was just passed, as limited as it is? And a guy like living in Marin who's paying his taxes, going to work, and is not getting the benefits of being in a democratic society. I mean, what do we do?
Well, first of all, health care is not going to get rolled back in this Congress because the Senate is still in Democratic control, and the president will veto it because this is his bill. I mean, for those of us that voted for it, because we wanted to get at least started with something, we're thankful that it can't get rolled back, but we want to build on it. I mean, the Economic Council, his Economic Commission, they put the robust public option as one of the revenue raisers. And if you want to raise revenue, in the wars, don't spend so much on the Pentagon, and tax the rich, and have a robust public option.
Is single payer still alive?
Well, it's alive because it's alive in California. It's certainly alive in my district, but it isn't. I mean, if we can't get a robust public option where we at least bring competition to the table, so premiums won't just skyrocket, which they are. You talked about your experience. Anyway, if we can't do that, we're not going to have a single payer for a long time. But if California would have a single payer, California's got the population of all of Canada, we could prove that indeed any other state that wanted to do that could follow our lead.
Congresswoman, 2 quick questions about civil liberties. The FBI has admitted widespread abuse of the national security letters that are permitted under the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act keeps getting renewed. Senator Feinstein even wants to make it permanent as is. But the most recent move was a short-term extension, and there does seem to be opposition building. Is there a way to fix the Patriot Act?
Vote against it. 218 votes in the House and 51 votes in the Senate.
But is there the will for that?
Obviously not yet. But
and the abuses are inconsequential to members?
Well, I guess some, but not to me. You see, members are, and I always really dislike speaking for other people. Members, and this is how they think. Members don't want to get labeled as being soft.
But soft on the Constitution?
Yeah, soft on anything.
Well, that leads to my next question. The widespread wiretapping that was initiated under Bush continues.
Yeah.
It's apparently legal now, or at least we can't challenge it in the courts.
Right.
Do you have any way that we can get our full Fourth Amendment rights back?
Well, have new Congresses made up of different people that are held accountable for wanting civil rights and civil liberties to be stronger. And until we do that, the country is not always voting in their own best interests. And that's what I find to be just really scary.
I find that amazing, actually. Let's talk a little bit about something local. Earmarks are eliminated, apparently, I guess they say, for the moment. We have some projects in Marin that we're looking to do. You mentioned SMART. Is the prohibition against earmarks going to have an ill effect, or is the budget going to have an ill effect on specific programs here in Marin?
Well, transportation, let's use that as a perfect example where we would get our funding for, earmarks are a tiny percent of what we spend on anything, but as long as we have them, I want to get my share for the district. I fear they're going to cut the transportation budget drastically, and which means those are jobs, those are our projects. I mean, but if they don't cut it, there will be funding, and it'll be competitive, and we will go get our share. And I've promised that to my local officials, and I mean, so there's no more earmarks. That's a big mistake. It's the only time a member can stand up for their district and say, this is the most important project in my district at the moment. And this is, I'll beg you appropriators, I want that for my district. But we can't do that now. but we will do everything in my offices to help get the funding. There will be money. You know there will be money out there. So we will get our share of it.
When you said earmarks are dead for the moment, I almost got this wink and nod here. Do you think that whole demonstration by the Republicans when they came in and talked about earmarks like that was just bells and whistles and show off for their constituents and really not sincere?
Well, I think it's sincere for the moment, but I think, everything changes. And they're going to find out that oh my goodness, I can't fund this project in my district. Oh, I'm going to be very unpopular because the people in my district need an extra $100,000. They're going to want this money as well as much as we do.
Congressman Woolsey, in just a minute or so remaining, could you tell us what you accomplished in Congress that you're most proud of?
Well, I think I'm most proud of getting the discussion on bringing our troops home from Iraq and having the courage to do that and knowing it was the right thing. I've spoken 489 times on the House floor for 5 minutes since Iraq started. Now Afghanistan is in it, and if we keep on in Libya, I'll include that also. I really believe there's a smarter way to deal with foreign countries that need our help other than bombs and bullets. And people are starting to talk that way in different parts of the country, seeing that, it doesn't mean you don't engage, it means you engage in a smarter way. I'm also very proud of what I've done as the head Democrat on the Workforce Protection Subcommittee. We were really ready, and we have the legislation written there to bring OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, into the 21st century and to protect our workers.
Yeah.
And
well, I have to stop you there. We're out of time, but I want to thank you for joining us and thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
You.